Hi everyone, and welcome back to Chaos Head Noah. Yeah, last episode got really dark. uh, yeah, that was quite, the game was already dark, but sorry, I think that was my dog barking. But, yeah, things went from, it was already pretty dark, having a guy who was, stabbed with a bunch of crucifixes. Like, none of the murders compare to the sheer brutality of what was described about Senna's mother. Just, jeez. And, so many questions are popping up now. So, I said this on Discord to most people, but I think I may as well get it out in the open what, my current theory on, new gen is. The best I can come up with is that I believe that each case was probably committed by a unique individual, but they were being mind controlled by a gigalomaniac, one of the seven. And I suspect that Nanami may be the culprit in that regard. Why she's doing it, I don't know, but well, if she's doing it in the first place. But yeah, I was already kind of I was already kind of having some trust issues regarding her. And how we hadn't seen Takemi's parents up to that point, or his actual home life beyond childhood flashbacks. But now, last episode's revelation kinda makes me feel a little more confident in that possibility. At the very least, something about Nanami's existence is an anomaly. Doesn't necessarily mean she's the culprit, but feels like probably the most suspicious to me. The most suspicious person to me. Yeah. But, yeah, I'll go ahead and get started with Chapter 9 here. And, yeah, once again, going to be long episodes from here on. So, just prepare yourself. This will be quite the ride, and I hope you're willing to take it with me. From the train windows, an indigo blue could be seen permeating the sky. The trains of the Yamanote line grew chaotic as businessmen and students alike made their way back to their homes. Two of its passengers, Kusunoki Yua and Yasuji Ban, stood shoulder to shoulder as they shook along with the commuting train, holding on to its hanging straps for stability. They were admittedly an odd pair, and perhaps due to how much they stood out, Yua had been feeling constant gazes coming from all around her. It would stand to reason that this was why she was repeatedly fidgeting with her hair and glasses. She was still not yet acquainted enough with the detective, Bon, to strike up a casual conversation with him. She had only met him a few days prior, after all. Shinjuku was only a single station away from Shibuya, and yet the 3 minutes it took to reach there felt helplessly longer than they should have. Bon simply stood silently, gazing out the window. He made no attempt to speak with Yua. Yua's current impression of Bon was that he did not seem to be a bad person, but that he was still somewhat frightening. She had met other detectives that were on the case involving her sister, but none of them had left an especially good impression. Perhaps that had left her with an unconscious prejudice against detectives, and by extension, Bon. Or so she had concluded in her introspection.
だから地下15階の番人倒せば隠しダンジョン行けるだろ常識的に考えて
That is one of the most painful voices I have ever heard in my life, like nails on a chalkboard.
万人どこにいるかわからんなり
Ever since the two of them had boarded the train at Shinjuku Station, two men standing near the door had been talking in an excessively loud manner. Regardless of her desires, Yua was forced to listen to those two talking loud as could be, all without an ounce of consideration for those around them.
マップの左端の方だよ一目でわかるだろ番人
っていうか万人と警官の区別つかないぞなもし
いやいやどう見ても番人だろどこが警官なんだよ番人は銃持ってねえよ
Both of them wore plain clothes, bandanas, fingerless gloves, and bulging rucksacks on their backs. Gee, I wonder who they are. The two were a pair of so-called otakus. Yua herself was interested in and thus consumed both anime and manga, so it was not their appearances that left her surprised. She had simply never been to Akihabara before, so it was her first time seeing a stereotypical otaku, complete with the clothes and everything. Realizing her curious glances were quite rude, she quickly averted her eyes. In the seat directly in front of her, a high school girl with brown hair and a navy blue blazer was typing a message on her cell phone. Her gaudy artificial nails tapped the screen rapidly, and every time her fingers moved, her cell phone strap of a pistol swung back and forth. Naturally, Yua had seen the contents of her message. This was not through any fault of her own, however. The girl was holding her phone horizontally, giving everyone around her the free rein to see everything she wrote. It was so easy to see, in fact, it was almost as if she wanted Yua to see it. Okay, so, why is today dubbed to the mixer with a cop and was so sobering I couldn't read room at all. So annoying, oh gosh. Despite being a high school girl herself, Yua could not even begin to grasp the contents of the message. It was possible that it could have been Gyaru speak, but to her, it looked like nothing short of a coded message. All of a sudden, the voice of a child rang throughout the train's interior. Startled, Yua turned toward the source of the sound. A lone boy, about 5 years of age, stood right beside Bon. He held a squirt gun in his hand, its muzzle pointed straight at Bon. The boy even pulled the trigger, but no water came out from the end of it. Bon gave the child a big smile. His eyes, meanwhile, told a different story. However, despite the message Bon attempted to convey, the child showed no intention of stopping. Bon.
ノブ君やめなさい
A woman, likely his mother, rushed to her son's side. She turned toward Bon and politely bowed.
すいませんバーンバーンノブ君やめなさいって
The mother scolded her son in an attempt to make him stop, but her reprimanding never extended beyond verbal. She did not take the water gun from him, nor did she attempt to grab his hand.
バーンバーンバーンあ本当にすいません
いや構いませんよ
バーンバーンバーンおじさんが困ってるでしょノブ君
To you, the scene seemed very unnatural. The mother was clearly angry at her child and showed an apologetic demeanor toward Bon, but that was the only thing normal about it.
バーンバーンバーンやめなさい、怒るわよ。バーンバーンバーン
The boy remained completely indifferent and unresponsive, simply choosing to repeat the same word over and over again. And yet, despite his inaction, the mother made no attempts to stop him with anything other than words. So we had the guy back at the Garo Froggy store who sounded like he was saying Bon, and now we have this child who's saying Bong, Bong, Bong. Oops.
本当にすいません。バーンバーンバーン
For some reason, Bon simply sat there and let the boy do as he pleased.
バーンバーンバーン
In the end, the scene continued on until they arrived at Shibuya Station. Upon coming to a full stop at the station, the train doors opened, but the mother and son showed no signs that they intended to disembark. Relieved, Yua exited onto the platform along with Bon. Taking a peek at his expression, she saw a clearly forced smile sitting upon his face.
お急ぎ中のお客様にお知らせいたします。地下鉄番号門線
Why do they keep saying Bon?
失礼しました。半蔵門線は人身事故の影響でただいま振り替え運転を行っております。
Okay, yeah, this is definitely intentional now. There's 3 cases of people saying Bon for some reason.
お客様には大変ご迷惑をおかけして申し訳ございません。
最近よく感じるんだ。
A crowd of people came and went through the platform. As Bon walked through along with that crowd toward the Hachiko gate, he began whispering to Yua.
まるで不特定多数の人間にストーカーされてるような気がするんだよな。
You definitely are.
どういうことですか？
さっきみたいなことがよくあるって話さ。周囲の人間の何気ない行動がまるで自分への嫌がらせじゃねえかって思えてくるわけ。
This was the reason why Bon had shown no reaction to the boy's mischief. Events such as those, ones that did not present much trouble, were becoming an everyday occurrence for him. Once he had begun picking up on it, it made it difficult for him to stay of sound mind. I'm thinking maybe those otakus with the rucksack were actually controlling the kid, maybe.
考えすぎだろうが、俺みたいな地味なおっさんに興味があるやつなんてそうそういねえだろうし。ただ集団ストーカーってのは確かに存在するんだよな。
Gang stalking, an organized form of stalking. Despite what the name implies, it does not mean that a group of people simply follow a victim. Instead, it refers to repeat minor offenses, often various forms of harassment, perpetrated against an individual by several individuals. In some cases, the harassment is done with such utter sophistication, the victim has no way to perceive the many incidents as connected. Specific examples of this harassment may include a victim being repeatedly bumped into by various people they don't know, a car honking endlessly in front of the victim's house late at night, people the victim has never met before alluding to private information only the victim should know, etc. Even though each of these offenses are not a cause for worry when viewed alone, if they continue to occur several times a day over the course of several months, the victim will begin to deteriorate mentally. This eventually results in the victim growing terrified of everything around them, even the most mundane things that weren't actually intended to be a part of the stalking effect, and no longer being able to trust anyone. However, there's a very fine line between actual gang stalking and someone suffering from a persecution complex, so identifying gang stalking as such must be done with extreme caution.
普通のストーカー行為とは何が違うんですか？
被害を受けてる側からすると、相手の意図や目的、正体すら全くわかんねえんだ。ただ、誰かに行く先々で毎日のようにさまざまな嫌がらせを受けていると感じる。集団ストーカーってのはそういうもんだ。
ただの考えすぎっていう可能性は？
十分にあり得るだろう。脅迫観念と紙一重だ。俺の場合はそうでもなさそうなんだけどな。ここ数日は相手もかなり直接的な手段に出てきてやがる。
と言いますと？
手を引けって脅迫する匿名の電話が何度かかかってきてな。
Please don't die, man. Please don't die. Actually, right, if I say please don't die, he's just more likely to die. Yes, please die, Bond. Please. Please. I beg of you, die. But don't actually. For some reason, Bond laughed as he told her that. Yua, however, was frightened, and she wrapped her arms around herself in an attempt to bring her comfort.
それ大丈夫なんですか？
まあ、デカにはよくあることさ。
Upon saying that, Bond immediately stiffened his expression and looked at Yua.
ユアちゃんは最近そんなようなことはないかい？
はい、ないと思います。
身の回りでちょっとでも違和感を覚えることがあったらすぐにおじさんに言ってくれ。ユアちゃんの身の安全を守るのは警察の仕事だからな。
はい。
Having listened to his words, Yua realized she was involved in something far more dangerous than she could have imagined.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
Yep. Her voice a whisper, Rimi said something nonsensical. Ignoring what she'd said, I glanced at the various houses around me. In this place well rooted in my memories, in this place I couldn't seem to recognize. Houses that should have been there, were nowhere to be seen. Houses that shouldn't have been there, were all I could see. The gap. The disparity between what I knew in my memories and the real scenery surrounding me was getting wider and wider.
ずれてなんかない。
Yelling those thoughts aloud, I desperately denied the despair welling up in my heart. Yeah, there wasn't any gap, none the slightest. I'd just taken a wrong turn. This wasn't the right street. It was just a misunderstanding on my part. There was nothing wrong with the world. To think otherwise would be ridiculous. Stumbling my way back down the street I'd come from, I burst into the neighboring alleyway. But just as I'd feared, between my memories and what I actually saw, something felt out of place. I realized that my entire body was soaked in sweat. My eyes refused to focus. My feet didn't feel well secured to the ground. All those feelings together hit me with an intense wave of nausea.
なんでだよ。ここに僕の家があるのは間違いないんだ。僕はいつもここから小学校にも中学校にも通ってたんだ。小学校にはナナミと手をつないで登校してたし、中学は自転車で。
どこの中学校？
Rimi, who had been following me, quietly asked a simple question.
どこって、
なんていう学校？
そんなの決まってるじゃないか。地元の
It's,
あれ、
I couldn't remember. I'd gone to middle school. I had clear memories of it, but I couldn't remember any of the finer details. It was as if some intense haze was covering my mind. The name of my middle school, which class I'd been a part of, or even the name of my homeroom teacher. No specific names came to me.
そんなはずないんだ。ただ忘れてるだけで。
タク、聞いて。あなたの記憶にあるのは、この場所に家があるじゃなくて、この場所に家があるはずっていう思い込み。そうでしょ？
My sanity was hanging on by a thread.
だって僕はここに来るまでの道は覚えてるんだぞ。おかしいじゃないか。
それは作られた記憶だから。
Stop making that face! Rimi's eyes were pointed straight at the ground, and she looked terribly sad. Without looking up at me, she just continued saying the most confusing, nonsensical things. Things that, once again, I didn't understand. Things that were impossible to understand. So, I stopped trying.
タクは中学には通ってないの？
わかったぞ。これドッキリでしょ。そうなんでしょ。きっとあれだ。そう、リミとナナミが実は知り合いとかで僕を二人して騙そうとしてるんじゃ。なんだ。そうか。ビビった。
I tried my best to laugh it off, but Rimi didn't even so much as chuckle.
ごめん。私、これからあなたを傷つけることを言わなくちゃ。タク、あなたはね、本来いちゃいけない存在なんだよ。
嘘つくな。
She was just trying to deceive me. Rimi was my enemy, just like all the others.
貼り付けはリミの仕業だな。
If that was true, then what happened at the crime scene when I'd first met her hadn't been a delusion. The true culprit behind Newgen wasn't the man I'd seen on the hospital TV earlier today. It was Rimi. She had been monitoring me the entire time. She knew I'd witnessed everything, so she refused to let me out of her sight. Also, I could never tell anyone else what I'd seen. That was the sole reason she'd bothered staying with me all this time.
君はあの時血まみれだった。だから君が犯人だ。
あれはあなたの望んだ妄想。ギガロマニアックスの妄想はね、強すぎる場合時に混じり合うの。妄想がシンクロするんだ。
Calmly, as though she was talking to herself, Rimi spoke. And yet, her composure only served to piss me off even more. Delusion time.
少なくともあの時、あの場所では4つの妄想がシンクロしてた。
At least 4 delusions synchronized then. Okay, so... Whoops, let me scroll. Positive or negative? There's no other negative for the rest of this chapter, so I may as well do negative. Boop.
タクと私とニュージェネの犯人と。
信じるもんか。
And who else?
Before she could continue, I cut her off. I then covered my ears and closed my eyes.
これは妄想だ。そうだよ、妄想なんだ。いつもしているみたいな。
I just realized IR2 was in there.
妄想しちゃダメ。
My mind, still trying to delude itself, was forcefully ripped back to reality by Rimi's words.
出ないと私タクを消さなくちゃいけなくなる。
殺すの？
A chill ran down my spine. My perception of Rimi, the girl I thought would save me, was rapidly spiraling. Now she was turning into someone completely unrecognizable to me.
殺すんだな。やっぱり君が殺人犯なんだ。
So why did she look so... Biting her lip as she fought back tears, hanging her head low as could be, it all made me hesitant to accuse her of anything. Tell me it's all a lie. Tell me it's all a prank so we can laugh it off. If you do, we can go back to how it used to be between us. I want to go back.
だったら僕は何なの？
ギガロマニアックスの妄想によって作られた人間かな。
Yep. Takumi is that person.
バカらしい。僕にはちゃんと記憶があるんだ。中学の頃の細かい記憶は思い出せないけど、忘れちゃっただけで。
あなたが生まれたのは1年半前なの。
Damn.
A year and a half ago? That would have been just when I'd started high school.
だったら僕は1歳半の赤ん坊っていうことじゃないか。バブ言ってなくちゃおかしい。
タクは生まれた瞬間からタクだった。
君がその目で見たって言いたいの？確かに僕らは1年半前から友達だったらしいね。僕は覚えてないけど。
私とあなたが会ったのは1ヶ月前。
Welp.
貼り付けの現場。
I guess it was true then.
私はもともと水明の生徒じゃないから。
I guess she forced Misumi to have a delusion or something.
Rimi was a complete schizo. A complete another schizo. Just like all the others. No, not just schizo. Super schizo. She was not at a tier even Senna or Ayase could hope to match.
誰が僕を妄想したの？言ってみてよ。
西条匠くんだよ。
入ったアウト。僕が妄想なんでしょ。その僕が妄想して僕を作ったって矛盾してるじゃないか。はい、論破終了。それとも君の妄想、君が勝手に作り出した君だけの脳内設定なんでしょ。僕はそれに巻き込まないでよ。
私だってタクには知ってほしくなかった。ここにも来てほしくなかった。もっと強く引き止めればよかったね。
Then, gathering her resolve, Rimi raised her head and looked straight at me. Her eyes glimmered with sincerity. It didn't seem like she was lying. She felt entirely genuine.
でもここまで来たら本当のことを知ってもらった方がいいと思う。
But it wasn't the truth. It was all a lie. It had to be. Otherwise, my last thread of sanity would snap. Besides, who would ever believe someone who suddenly decided to hit them with, "Oh yeah, BT Dubs, you're a delusion."
あなたの行動が 他の人の命を削っていくんだって知ってもらった方が。
そうだ。ナナミは僕が妄想だったら、僕と血が繋がってるナナミも両親も妄想ってこと？そんなの無茶苦茶。
ナナちゃんはいるよ。
From the way Rimi talked about her, it was almost as if she knew her.
ナナミを誘拐したのは君なの？
似たようなものかもね。私はタクを守ることに気を取られすぎて、ナナちゃんが狙われる可能性を考えてなかった。私は誘拐犯のこと知ってる。
She really was a demon girl. I was right. I'd always been right. Rimi was the only one I wanted to be on my side. And even though I'd always believed that, there had always been more than enough reasons to doubt her. And yet, even so, I'd feigned ignorance, and simply trusted that she'd keep her promise to stay by my side.
Misumi is looking even more sus now.
But despite all that, just like you, Rimi was.
Yeah, like, Misumi immediately took to talking to me.
君も僕を裏切るんだね。
そうだね。私はタクを裏切った。隠し事をたくさんしてた。ごめんね。私のこと恨んでいいよ。
謝られたって、僕は信じない。信じられない。
Despite my words, it was impossible for me to prove that I was real. All the supernatural things I'd seen up until now flashed through my mind. That's when I knew I can just laugh off her words as some insane asshole. As I thought that, Rimi slowly began to approach me, and then embraced me. Taken completely by surprise, I surrendered myself to her. I could feel her warmth. She had saved me. She had saved my soul. She'd taught me nothing but kindness. But now, despite being in the center of her embrace, her warmth could not have felt more distant.
そろそろ行かなきゃ。
行くって、どこへ？
ナナちゃんをさらった誘拐犯のところ。決着つけなくちゃいけないの。ナナちゃんのことも他のことも、このままだとタクも守りきれないし。
そんなの無責任だ。僕にここまでひどいこと言っておいて逃げるの？
Mimi started inching away from me. One step, then another. Slowly, she distanced herself.
戻ってくるから、タクは部屋にいて。
I'm guessing that, like, the original Nishijo Takumi is, like, hospitalized, like, maybe paralyzed or something, and, like, he's unable to do anything in his current form, so he has to rely on
そしたらま
Mimi.
た
I mean,
一緒にいろいろ楽しいお話ししよう。
he has to use Takumi as a proxy for something.
あなたはあそこにいてもいいんだよ。
Such a gentle tone. Even though she had said all those cruel things, why was she still being so nice to me?
でも一つだけ約束。もう妄想はしない。ね。タクの妄想力はとっても強いから。妄想すればするほど本物のあなたの命が削られていっちゃうんだ。
何を？
それじゃあまた明日。石。
Rimi struck a pose, saluting me with the most unnatural smile on her face. It could not have been more forced. And only a moment later, from her eyes, quiet tears began to fall. Mimi frantically turned her back to me, and as her shoulders started to tremble, she ran away. And I, having been left behind in a stupor, sank helplessly to my knees.
本物の僕ってなんだよ。僕は偽物じゃない。
How color vanished from the world. All hope I once had was gone. My very existence had been denied. There was no meaning in me being here. Not even my death held any meaning. Rimi had left me, leaving behind a meaningless husk. She was my enemy. She had deceived me. And now, having said her piece, she had probably lost her final remaining reason to be with me.
戻ってくるはずない。
So if delusions can be shared, then I guess it's possible that Rimi was actually participating in those delusions where it seemed like they weren't actually delusions.
Rimi had abandoned me, but of course she had. I was a delusionary existence, according to her. A monster. Forget it. I didn't care anymore. With no willpower to even stand up, I just stayed there. Still unable to organize my thoughts, incapable of crying due to the sheer shock. The twilight wind robbed me of all warmth, and the very little that remained of Rimi's faded completely. As I looked up at the sky for no particular reason, I gazed at the sunset, a sunset that had almost been completely eroded by the dark of night.
"これが新作?またへんてこね。
Momose smiled as she stared fixedly at the Gero Froggy keychain Bon had just purchased.
でも可愛いじゃない?
そりゃ新作じゃねえよ。先週出たなんだっけ。
Bon glanced over at Yua as if pleading for help.
涙目ゲロカエルンです。
ああ、そうそうそう。それ。
ごめんね、ひわちゃん。こんなむさ苦しいおじさんに付き合わされて大変だったでしょう。
いえ。
ひでえな、ももちゃん。こんなダンディーな中年はなかなかいねえぜ。
With Bon's half-joking protest falling on deaf ears, the president of Frisia served Yua some tea. Heaving a deep sigh, Bon sat down on the chair and glanced around the office. The employees of Frisia, who usually worked well into the night, had actually returned home on time today. Each worker's schedule was arranged to tell this exact tale on the whiteboard. Thanks to their departures, despite the sun having only just set, the office was now completely silent, as if it were the dead of night.
で、ももちゃん、進行のこと調べてくれたかい?
Before riding the train from Shinjuku, Bon had called Momose in advance and asked her to look into Faithworks.
その前に
Smile still on her face, Momose glanced over at Yua, who was sipping from her teacup.
ひわちゃん、お茶を飲んだら帰った方がいいわ。日も暮れたし、ご両親が心配するでしょ。
Yua realized what the intent behind Momose's words were. Whatever the conversation that would soon take place was, it was not meant for Yua's ears.
私のこと心配してくれているんですか？
ええ、そうよ。
Momose nodded with a serious look on her face. Although thankful for her consideration, Yua shook her head definitively in response.
私帰りません。ミヤちゃんの死の真相に近づくためなら何だってするつもりです。
あなたはこれ以上関わるべきじゃないわ。
私もとっくに当事者の一人です。
An imposing, unwavering resolve dwelt within Yua's words. Momose was perplexed at the unexpected opposition.
意外と頑固ね。
ま、ここでのけ者にするのもこくってもんだろう。いざとなったら警察で保護するさ。
Momose was forced to sigh in response to Bond's nonchalant attitude.
バンちゃんにそんな権力があるのかしらね。
ま、こう見えても一応天下の警視庁捜査一課所属だからな。
あらそう。
Upon pacifying Bond to a suitable degree, Momose stared intently at Yua.
これから聞くことは絶対に口外しちゃダメよ。これはあなたの命にも関わることだから、それを肝に銘じてね。
はい。
Yua nodded, her expression far stiffer than before. Upon seeing that, Momose sighed once more, then proceeded to take a seat. Momose, hunching her already rotund body forward, operated the mouse connected to her laptop.
で、進行から何が出たんだい？
バンちゃんの予感的中って感じね。
Both Bon and Yua appeared at the monitor from behind Momose.
有限会社新興の親会社はのぞみテクノロジーよ。
NoAH Organization of Medical Instruments. They really tried hard to make that acronym work, didn't they? For the sake of the next generation, for the people in the environment, we are already well on our way to a better world. Nozomi Technology will be hosting a general European medical exhibition. Cumulative financial results of Q1 of the fiscal year. Our efforts to bolster the medical instrument development industry. Regarding human resources executives.
のぞみテクノロジ
のぞみグループか。こいつは驚きだな。
新興は5年前にのぞみグループに吸収合併されたんだけど、それ以降発売した商品が次々と大ヒットしてるのよ。
Hey, it's me, Garo! Oh wait, no. Like Garo Froggy. Fatty Garo Froggy. Rugged Garo Froggy. Smooth Garo Froggy. Shining Garo Froggy. Cat Garo Froggy. Spooky Garo Froggy. Sleepy Garo Froggy. Burning Garo Froggy. Zombie Garo Froggy. You drunk Garo Froggy. Goggling Garo Froggy. Hey, it's me, Garo! Items under the special tab on the left are on sale now under LTDED Garo Froggies. Are the first in our newest campaign. Click here for more about our accessories, plushes, and all other bargains. Click here for more about our merchandise and dirt cheap sales. We're exploding with froggies! Check out all the latest sales and snatch them all up. Spend 5,000 yen for free shipping. Info site about our dirt cheap merchandise. Insanely popular item. They're hopping off the shelves. Ghetto Froggy. Is there anyone out there that doesn't know about this incredibly popular ugly cute character? We are selling merchandise for them. The Ghetto Froggy. We pay special attention to make sure their unique expression comes to life in our merchandise. Join the craze and get yourself a Ghetto Froggy today. Shipping 525 yen nationwide. Order over 10 and shipping is free. One Ghetto Froggy. Price 1,800 yen. Product ID 3486. Quantity 1. Add to cart. They need to they need to fire their web designer. This looks like a scam.
ゲロカイロンだけじゃないの。中国製バッグとかタイ製のエコバッグとか美脚パンツとかで、この会社は商品の売り出し方が独特なの。いつも週末に新製品を一斉に投入するのよ。
Weekends. That word stuck out especially to Bond.
G レートとの関係は？
必然にしろ偶然にしろ新興の商品がヒットしているのは G レートの変動の影響ね。それは確かよ。前に見せた G レートのグラフ覚えてる？ 5年ぐらい前からずっと毎週末に値が上がってるって言ったわよね。新興がのぞみグループに合併された時期とぴったり一致するわ。
新興がレートを操作してると思うかな。
新興自体はそんなに大きな会社じゃないからそれは無理よ。
となると親会社のぞみが怪しいな。グループ総出で取り組めばレート操作だってできそうじゃねえか。
待って、のぞみの方はもちろんだけど新興が興味深いのはそこだけじゃないの。設立当初の資料にまで遡ってみたらすごい大物が出てきたのよ。
Oops.
大物？
井ノ原構造。
Inohana CoZ.
はっは。明和党の重鎮じゃねえの。
新興設立当時はまだ民自党在籍時代だけどね。
I'm guessing he's the bearded guy in the kimono.
つながってきたな。太田教授の時、それとこの前の地震の時、明和党は G レートに関係ありそうな件について報道規制の圧力をかけている。
G レートのグラフのことだけどいろいろ調べてたら他にも面白いパターンを見つけたわ。
As of now, there were two aspects about the GE rates that Momose had her attention on. First, the fact that they consistently rose each and every weekend. The maximum values themselves were not particularly noticeable, but aside from New Year's, Golden Week, and the Bone Festival, they always went up without fail. And second, the drastic rise following earthquakes. For both the quake 2 months ago, in which there were 8 fatalities, and the quake 1 week ago, in which there were more than 100 fatalities, the GE rate had shown an extreme upsurge for a short period of time.
で、3つ目のパターン。この5年で4回だけ起きてるわ。時期はどれもまちまち。上昇値は地震の時ほどじゃないけど、結構高いの。最初はこれが何を意味してるのかわからなかったんだけど、調べていくうちにこの5年で4回と符合するイベントに行き着いた。
イベント？
もったいぶらずに教えろよ。
選挙よ。衆参合わせて4度行われた選挙日とその4回の GE レート上昇の日は完全に同じだったわ。
Bond stroked his unshaven chin with a stern look on his face.
野党だった明和党が大躍進を遂げて与党になった選挙は
4年前ですね。
そして井ノ原構造が民自党を電撃的に離党して 明和島に移ったのは5年前。
A heavy silence hung in the air around the three of them.
なんだか私、お話を聞いていたら怖くなってきました。
Yua's voice trembled slightly as she murmured.
私もびっくりだわ。ここまでキーワードがぴったり当てはまるなんてね。
まだ状況証拠でしかないがな。それでも G レートのことを知っていたからこそ気づけたわけだ。知らなかったらさっぱりだったろ。
As he said that, Bond nonchalantly retrieved his favorite handheld fan and began waving it at himself.
ところで、俺が調べた女子高生の生態について話していいかい？
Momose, bewildered by Bond's sudden change of topics, started staring daggers at the detective.
ああ、そうね。いきなりそんなくだらないこと言い出すんじゃないわよ。ゆあちゃんがいるんだから少しは考えなさい。
そういうねって。
A slight smirk colored Bond's face, but his eyes did not match such a sentiment.
青いセナについてだ。正しくは畑野セナと言うべきか。なぜか最近になって母親の旧姓を使い始めたんだよな。
Hatano.
その畑野セナの父親、畑野一世は今失踪して行方不明らしいんだが、のぞみテクノロジーの元社員なんだよ。
どういうこと？
どういうことも何も、そのまんまさ。
Nozomi Technology was a company that primarily developed software for use in medical equipment. The Nozomi Group had begun with Nozomi Technology, but through repeated mergers and acquisitions, it had become one of Japan's top leading conglomerates.
半年前、畑野セナの母親と生後1年の妹が謎の死を遂げている。父親の失踪はその直後だ。畑野セナ本人もそれと前後して当時預けられていたとある施設を脱走するって騒ぎを起こした。
施設ですか？
天神寮っていう非営利の自立更生支援施設だ。表向きはな。
表向きってじゃあ裏があるの？
スポンサーがいるのさ。これが天聖振興会だったりする。
天聖振興会。
Momose grimaced at those words. She then spoke once more, her tone now clearly exasperated.
また面倒な名前が出てきたわね。
ちなみにその天神寮は2年前まで別の名前だった。アークハートメディカル会。
Welp!
どんな偶然か今や渋谷の若者のカリスマ的存在であるレス岸本綾瀬もここに入れられていたんだな。畑野セナとは入れ違いだったみてえだな。
Bond then leaned forward toward Momose and Yuba.
でだ。ここからが興味深いんだが、アークハートメディカル会は天神寮と違ってメンタルケア施設だった。精神病患者を治療してたんだ。ところが2年前、アークハートメディカル会は突然非営利団体の自立更生支援施設天神寮へと姿を変えた。それによって精神科医が一斉に解雇されたんだが、その医師たちを丸ごと雇い入れたのが代々木にある AH 東京総合病院なんだ。
Which would have to include Dr. Takashina, I assume.
ノータリン事件で殺された人が勤めていたのってそこの病院でしたよね。
ああ、高階文夫。確かに AH 東京総合病院の精神科医だ。 ついでに言うと、そこの病院長は井ノ花と懇意らしいぜ。
また井ノ花議員ね。
ゆあちゃん、君が追ってた西条拓実も実は AH 東京総合病院をこの1ヶ月で3回訪れてる。
そうなんですか？
警察がずっと尾行してたんでね。確かに。しかも西条には数年前にその病院に入院した記録まであった。彼の主治医は
Oh,
高階文夫だ。
yeah.
不思議なのは西条の入院記録なんだよな。彼は10歳で入院して約2年後にその記録が途切れてるんだが、退院した記録はなかった。
Because he wasn't. So wait. Yeah. Yeah, about 2 years ago. So that would have been when our Takumi was created.
誰かが改ざんしたのかしら。
どうだかな。そこまでは調べが回らなくてね。ああ、それと畑野瀬名に関してもう一つ。最近彼女がよく行動を共にしている折原梢って生徒がいる。1ヶ月ほど前に転校してきた西条のクラスメイトなんだが、この子も結構な曰くつきなんだ。折原の父親がのぞみグループの系列会社社員なわけ。元は広島の方に住んでてな。折原梢の同級生3人が何者かに襲われて重傷を負うって事件が起きてる。3人ともが右腕を鋭利な刃物で切断されて、ひどいありさまだったらしい。
Yep. Because she actually did do it.
折原もその場に居合わせていた。彼女が犯人じゃねえかって疑いがかかったんだが、凶器が存在しないって理由で逮捕はされてない。それで地元に居づらくなって引っ越したって噂もある。
凶器が存在しない？見つからないじゃなくて？
ああ、存在しないだ。何で切られたのかさえ分かってない。犯行は折原以外には実行できない状況だった。だが、たとえ折原が犯人だとしても、凶器をどこからか取り出すことも、どこかに隠すことも不可能だった。かまいたち現象じゃないかなんて本気で議論されたぐらいだ。
何もないところから剣を取り出す手品
かもしれねえな。
君が悪いです。
Cuba, as if trying to stop herself from trembling, hunched down toward her knees and began to stroke both of her arms with her hands.
何かとても大きな意志が働いているような。
職業柄俺は陰謀論なんざ信じちゃいねえんだが、今回ばかりはその存在を信じそうになるね。明和とそしてのぞみグループ G レートに関係してると思われるのはその2つか。
天聖振興会も叩けば埃が出てきそうね。もともとあまりいい噂は聞かないし。
Sipping some of her tea, Momose shrugged her shoulders.
あんちゃんには呆れるわ。本来の仕事をほったらかしにしてこんなことを調べてたなんて。
元はといえばももちゃんが G レートのことを教えてくれたのがいけないんだね。
そうだけどそれで捜査本部から外されちゃったら世話ないわ。本当に不器用なんだからあんたって人は。
Those words were neither those of astonishment nor of condemnation, but rather a fairly roundabout way of praising him. Momose, despite her words, acknowledged Bon in his pursuits.
おっと電話だ。
Bon's cell phone let out an electronic tune. Looking at the display, he saw that the caller was a restricted number.
もしもし。
Loud static could be heard from the other end of the call. Bond took the phone away from his ear and looked at the display once more. His connection was good, so he was likely not the issue. It must have been the caller causing the problem. Bond brought his ear closer to the phone, believing that the call was coming from someplace far away.
おい、誰だ？
This was one of the anonymous, threatening phone calls he had been receiving recently. The mechanical sounding voice was likely due to the use of a voice changer. Bond let out an audible laugh before proceeding to answer.
あんたか。いい加減名乗ってくんねえかな。手を引けって言われてもな。そもそも何から手を引きゃいいんだ。そこを具体的に言ってもらわねえと。
They always hung up there, always after saying back off twice. The pattern repeated itself so often, it was practically routine. No matter how much Bond tried to speak to them, there was never an answer. But on this day, that would finally change.
ああ
Oh no.
誰だ？
They took another hostage. Upon hearing that, Bond finally understood whose distressed voice it was on the other end of the call.
諏訪か？ 誰にやられた？今どこにいる？相手は一人なんだな。おい、大丈夫なのか？
Welp!
諏訪、おい、諏訪。
Hosky, you're looking sus. No matter how much Bond called out to him, there was no response from the other end of the call. With a click of his tongue, Bond hung up. Momose and Yuo were looking at Bond with intense concern. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm backing off on my anonymity theory. Momose and Yuo were looking at Bond with intense concern.
スワちゃんに何かあったの？
Bond stood up, then lightly slapped his cheeks twice.
諏訪が人質に取られた。どうやら AH 東京総合病院にいるみてえだ。
まさか名和と？
ああ、わかんないが。このままじゃまずい気がする。
応援を頼んだ方がいいわ。
大ごとにしたらそれこそ諏訪の命はねえよ。俺一人で様子を見てくれ。
Bond placed his favorite handheld fan on top of the table, close to where Momose's hands rested. Following this, he took a good long look at each of the girls. His demeanor was like that of an entirely different person's. The unreliable, middle-aged detective that he had so often played was nowhere to be seen. All there was now was an intense, fearless expression on his face.
ももちゃんとゆあちゃんもどこかに身を隠せ。わかったな。
Through no will of my own, my legs moved in the direction of my base. They were heavy. So heavy, in fact, I wondered if my heels were packed with lead. Except it wasn't just my legs. My entire body felt heavy. But despite how hard it was to move, I kept telling myself that it was proof that my body existed, that I wasn't a delusionary existence. The sun had already set, meaning that there was no one in the city to pay any attention to me as I staggered through the streets. Before now, I would push everyone away, telling them not to look at me. I was scared of getting too much attention, of being a laughingstock. But even though I'd done that for so long, right now I just wanted someone, anyone, to look at me. I wanted someone to see me with their eyes. I wanted someone to acknowledge that I was here. That was the Deus Ex Machina I needed. But no one did. If I randomly yelled out something, I'd probably get looks of disdain. But I didn't have the willpower to go through with that. Within my sweaty hand was my cell phone, the one I'd gone out to buy with Nanami. I only had 4 numbers registered on it. Rimi's cell phone, Nanami's cell phone, Misumi-kun's cell phone, and the number for my parents' house. I tried desperately to think of a way to prove I wasn't fake with just those 4 phone numbers.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
No. I wasn't a delusionary existence. I was real. I was Nishijo Takumi. I was 17 years old. I was a second year at Suiwei Academy. I was in a family of 4. I was...
助けて。僕を証明して。
My teeth were chattering. A clearly audible clacking sound. I wasn't cold whatsoever, and yet I trembled all the same.
助けてよ。
From the 4 numbers I had, I chose Misumi-kun's. Not a good idea.
はい。
ミス。
ダークだろ。どうしたんだ。リミとうまいこと言ったか。ちゃんと童貞卒業できたんだろうな。感謝しろよ。気を使って2人にしてやったんだからよ。
Misumi-kun was the same as ever. That at least brought me some relief. He did know me. He recognized me as Nishijo Takumi. So I wasn't a delusionary existence. Rimi had just been lying. I knew it.
そういえば、ついさっき美奈子から言われたんだけどよ。
美奈子。
ああ、俺の女。で、美奈子が言うんだよ。ここ1ヶ月ぐらい、日常と急に仲良くなったけど、なんでって。こいつ何言ってんだって最初は思ったんだけど、そもそも俺、普通だったらお前みたいなやつとは絶対関わろうとしねえんだよな。リミを通して知り合ったってのは、なんとなく記憶にあるんだけどよ。細かいことはなぜか思い出せねえんだよな。
It was the same. It was the same situation I'd experienced earlier. Stop it. I don't want this. Don't say anything else, please. You could have just talked about girls like you always do. So why, today of all days, did you have to...
お前さ、いつ俺とダチになったんだっけ。
I got too freaked out, so I instantly hung up. Yep. Thing with Misumi is like, I could see them pulling a he's evil thing, but also like, I can't really like come up with any incentive for the actions he's responsible for. Like, he seems legit. I'm kind of like 50-50 on trusting him. If he turns out to be evil, I won't be surprised. If he's just completely normal dude, I still won't be surprised. I felt like I was about to cry, yet no tears came. It simply felt like my heart was being torn to shreds.
Oh, and if he were straight up the new gen killer, congratulations, Misumi. You got me. I did not suspect you whatsoever. Maybe a little bit.
Next, I decided to try calling home. Despite how hard my fingers were trembling, I somehow managed to select the number, and pressed the call button. Nanami had registered this one. I hadn't put it in myself, so there was no doubt the call would go through. Considering what time it was, would my dad be home? Had my mom left already? Was Nanami there? Even if it did connect, what would I even say? Hey, I'm your son, right? They would probably think I was screwing with them. I was being stupid. In truth, it was a stupid question. What if they said no? What if they said, our son Takumi is eating dinner with his sister in the living room? What if the phone call that was supposed to prove I was real actually did the exact opposite? What if they asked, who are you? As the negative thoughts continued to swell up in my mind, I grew more and more afraid. I didn't want to know the outcome. I was really scared, and I couldn't control it. I felt like I was about to go insane. My breathing grew ragged. I could barely breathe anymore. Right then, the call connected. With the phone next to my ear, I prepared myself.
あなたがおかけになった電話番号は現在使われておりません。番号をご確認の上、もう一度おかけ直しください。
No one would prove that I was me. There was no one that could. I wanted to die. Raising my head, I noticed Yamanote Dori in front of me, with lots of cars coming and going.
Okay. So, positive.
Maybe it was for the best that I died. There's no value in a fake being alive. I was worthless. Even if a monster did try and live in this world, they'd just end up being persecuted. I had neither hopes nor dreams. My existence itself was repulsive to people. I wanted to be freed from all of this. If I died, I'd be free. After all, there'd be no more need to think. There'd be nothing more to suffer from. There'd be no one to laugh at me. There'd be no one to betray me. I wanted nothingness. With my own 2 feet, I took a single step forward. Or at least, I intended to. But my legs didn't move an inch. They wouldn't do it for me. And before I realized, my knees had started trembling. I couldn't gather the courage. Despite how much I wanted to die, the fear of death wouldn't allow me to take even a single step forward. I wanted to die, and yet I also feared death. I didn't understand. I couldn't grasp my own feelings anymore. Did I want to live or die? Which was it? I clenched my teeth, closed my eyes, and repeated to myself, I want to die. But just as I feared, my legs wouldn't move. Seeing the steel cars pass by so quickly, the thought of getting run over by one of those high-speed weapons came to mind, and my body froze completely. In the end, I sank to the ground. At what should have been the end of it all, I finally got to know how much of a pussy I was. How much of a spoiled brat I was. I ended up thinking about what would be most convenient for me. If I can't move from here, what if a car skids on the road and runs me into the sidewalk? How nice that would be if some act of God like that had me die. Whoosh! Whoosh! As Sakihata Rimi walked beneath the Shibuya Station underpass, she took out her cell phone. She had walked straight here right after parting ways with Takumi. She then selected the number registered in her address book as Nana-chan and placed a call. They picked up the very next moment.
私、実はちょっとした報告があります。ナナちゃんをこれから助けに行こうと思って。
Rimi had an idea of where Nanami was being held, as well as who had abducted her. A theory she had only come to because she had been in a similar situation herself once before.
Whoops. It was a past she wanted to forget, but it was one she was ready to confront in order to rescue Nanami, no matter how steeped in darkness those memories may be. The reaction of whom she called was exactly as Rimi had predicted, leading her to inevitably start laughing.
私って信用されてないな。平気だってば。
Both her voice and expression were cheerful. Not an ounce of the grim resolve she carried could be felt. To an outside observer, it looked simply as if she was having a fun, engaging conversation.
昔の話だしね。そもそも私の感情とナナちゃんを助けることとどっちを優先させるかなんて
She's
決
calling
まりきってることだ
Senna,
よ。
I assume.
言ったでしょ。私はあなたの力になりたいって。
Or
それに特には関わらせたくない。
as she said that, Rimi's expression clouded over.
ねえ、ちょっとだけ語っちゃっていいかな。タクにね、いろいろひどいこと言っちゃったんだ。しかもそんなことしておいてすごく自分勝手なんだけど、私彼と一緒に過ごした時間はとっても楽しかったって思っちゃってるんだ。何もかもが妄想でまみれたまやかしでしかなかったのに、学生生活もあの学校に私やタクが通ってることも、大ちんと友達だっていうことも、私がタクと一緒にいようとしたことも、タクの存在そのものも。
Little by little, Rimi's pace slowed. Multiple strangers passed her by. We seem to be saying that, like, Takumi isn't just some, like, clone of the original Takumi, but, like, his very existence, well, I mean, his very nature, something about him is different than the Takumi that Rimi knows, I guess. Little by little, Rimi's pace slowed. Multiple strangers passed her by.
タクってどうしようもないくらい情けなくて、どうしようもないくらい弱くて、きっと普通の女だったら見向きもしないような男の子なんだよ。
As she spoke, she squeezed the hand she held the cell phone with.
なのに私の心には楽しかったっていう気持ちがあるの。なのに私の心にはもっと一緒にいたかったっていう気持ちがあるの。 この気持ちって何なのかな。
Looking up, she saw the neon-lit night sky. No stars were in sight. For an ephemeral moment, Remy stood beneath it. A slight smile rose to her face when she received a response.
さてと、そろそろ切るね。本当に大丈夫だって。あなたは何も心配しないで。私が全部決着をつけてくるから。ね、匠。
Ah, yeah. I initially thought she was talking to Senna, but yeah. Taku and Takumi. Having lost all of my willpower, before I realized it, I found myself back in my base. I didn't know how I'd gotten here after failing to die at Yamanote Dori. My memory was hazy.
コンテナって誰がどうやってここまで運んだんだろう。
And who owns the building?
It was something I'd never even thought about until now. But now that I was, I couldn't help but notice how odd it felt. The more I thought about it, the more the feeling encroached upon my mind. The moment I closed the door, the room went pitch black. Leaning against the door, I simply stood there, still as could be. Inside the quiet room, all that could be heard was the sound of my shallow breathing and the hum of the fan inside my PC. I thought that maybe surrounding myself in darkness would make things easier, since I wouldn't have to be conscious of my pitiful self. But it had the exact opposite effect. Unable to see anything, and with nothing else to listen to, Remy's cruel words from before repeated endlessly in my mind.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
My own moans disgusted me more than ever before. I even felt nauseous. I was already a disgusting freak before all this. But if my very existence itself was warped, I was already beyond saving. I wanted to disappear completely. As I tripped over the trash scattered across the floor, I stumbled my way to the end of the room. I turned the lights on, scaring away the dark. I then grabbed the Seraton figure,
Post-awakening version.
that just so happened to enter my line of sight, and sat down in my chair. I brought her close to my chest. She was really small, and she was really hard too. She didn't breathe, nor did she speak. She didn't have the warmth that a 3D girl had.
Neither.
Despite that, she was all I had left. Remy had left me. I didn't know where Nanami was. Senna had attacked me. CoZ hadn't protected me. Yuo was my enemy. And Ayase was hospitalized. These were the only girls I knew the names of, and none of them would do anything for me. Reality was harsh. I didn't give a damn about a monster like me. With my trembling hands, I tightened my grip on Seraton. Then tighter, tight enough to break her. I wanted to disappear completely. If that was how I thought, shouldn't I just act? Ultimately, I was just playing the tragic protagonist right now. Even if I was overcome with sorrow, no one was going to empathize with me. Nobody was looking at me. Nobody was here for me. They had all abandoned me. No, I didn't have any real bonds. There was no one in my life I could count as a friend. I didn't even have a family. It was a fake after all.
オタクばっかり並べてる。
Just shut up and die already. Setting down Seraton, I sluggishly got up from my chair and found a plastic cord lying under my bed. I picked it up, made a ring big enough for my head to fit in, and tied the other end to a pipe of the loft bed.
死んでやる、死んでやるよ、死んでやるんだからな。
There was no one here to stop me. But of course there wasn't. I was the only one in this room. I managed to secure the plastic cord quite well. Dying is surprisingly easy, I thought to myself. I put my head inside the ring and tightened it around my neck. Normally, you couldn't hang yourself just from a loft bed. It wasn't high enough. But if I kicked my legs out from under me, then height wasn't an issue. What I needed was the resolve to die. Now at the end, I looked over at Seraton, who smiled at me from atop my desk. Starting with Seraton, my waifus lined up on the shelves would be the ones that would see me to the other side. I was struck by sorrow. Loneliness filled my heart. I felt a twinge in my nose.
さよなら。
Placing all my weight on the cord, I kicked my legs out. The cord started strangling me. It was putting immense pressure on my neck. It dug into my flesh, hard. It hurts. Before I knew it, I was unconsciously trying to relieve the pressure with my fingers. I moved my legs back into place, then went to stand up. But if I did that, I wouldn't be able to die. If I didn't keep all my weight on the cord, I wouldn't be strangled. So I endured it. My throat hurt. Rather than being unable to breathe, the pain of it digging into my neck was the worst part. Hurry up and die already. The suffering continued. It was so immense I couldn't even pass out. My body swayed aimlessly. Around and around it swayed, my legs kicking up and down. The pipe on my loft bed started creaking, and suddenly my body lost all support. And I violently crashed to the floor, landing flat on my ass. The impact I felt in the bones of my pelvis made me writhe in pain. And at the same time, I was desperately sucking in air. As tears welled up in my eyes, I looked up at the cord that had been tied to my bed, only to find that it had snapped in two at the center.
なんだよそれ。なんなんだよそれは。
Of all the times for me to fail, why at the very end when it mattered most? I knew I was beyond saving, a good-for-nothing loser that hadn't managed to accomplish even a single noteworthy thing in his entire life. Not that I was a person to begin with, but to fail even when trying to die, it was just too much. Why couldn't I die? Even though I wanted to die. Even though I wanted to die. Now that I knew how painful it was to be hanged, I would never have the will nor the courage to attempt it again.
楽に死ぬ方法を 誰か教えてよ。
Seeing my shameless tendency to rely on others rear its head once more, I was hit with a wave of nausea. I really was completely and entirely useless. Whoosh! Whoosh.
Human presence quickly faded from the hospital, cloaked in night. Perhaps, after taking in all the life and death during the day, it took this time to regain balance. At this time, the hospital housed neither the scent of life nor the scent of death. Only a quiet emptiness reigned. Ban Yasuji chuckled to himself as he realized the odd nature of his thoughts. Despite the minor self-flagellation, it did indeed feel especially quiet tonight. It was not yet time for the lights to be on, leaving the corridors steeped in darkness. There was not even a single sign of any nurses. Immediately after stepping foot into the lobby, Bon was hit with a very bad feeling. There was no logical reasoning behind it. It was simply what one might call a detective's gut. My gut is usually right for the most part. In his mind, he believed it to be an oddly superstitious thought, but this may have simply been a way to dismiss the feeling. While the taxi had driven him to the hospital, Bon had attempted to call Suwa's phone numerous times. But each and every one of them had failed, which only served to demonstrate his junior's precarious situation all the more clearly. There was no time to waste. He had to find the place where Suwa was being held within the large hospital and rescue him, all while not being detected by the kidnapper. The linoleum floor would have made his footsteps echo. To avoid this, Bon took off his shoes before entering the lobby. Winter was swiftly approaching at this time of year, a fact that Bon was readily made aware of when the chill from the floor sent shivers up his soles. The sound of the automatic front door echoed throughout the room, followed by the voice of a girl calling out Bon's name. The surprise of seeing her in the lobby put Bon at a loss for words. He hurried toward her in a panic. Beyond her glasses, her eyes threw anxious glances at her surroundings.
おい、なんでついてきたんだ。身を隠せって言っただろうね。
すみません。でも、私。
Bon looked for any signs of Momose, but she was nowhere to be seen. Realizing she had come alone, Bon scratched the top of his head with a concerned expression.
今すぐ戻れ。これは遊びじゃねえんだぞ。
それは分かっているつもりです。
分かってるなら帰るんだ。
Right as he spoke, a creaking sound came from the hallway across the lobby. In the very center of this empty, dark hallway, slowly, an empty wheelchair made its way to Bon and Yua. Then, at nearly the same exact time, someone could be heard running up the stairs.
とにかくユアちゃんは帰れ。いいな。
Before he had even finished giving his warning, Bon had already started running. He followed the footsteps up the stairs without waiting for Yua's answer. Given his typically languid demeanor, the speed at which Bon moved was like nothing anyone could have ever imagined. As he followed the footsteps, Bon found himself on the roof of the outpatient ward. It's gonna be husky. There were lines of shrubbery installed on the rooftop, forming a garden of sorts. It was most likely a space of healing for the patients there, but regrettably, as the lights were off, Bon could not see what kind of flowers were blooming there. Given the fact Bon was on the roof, it was only natural that the wind would blow strong. With ragged breaths, Bon quickly surveyed his surroundings. Without a shadow of a doubt, this is where the man behind the footsteps must have run. But now, he was nowhere to be seen. Was I led here on purpose? The man had fled while causing sounds that had seemed purposeful. Bond could not think of any other reason for him to have done that, aside from leading him there. Bond did not have his gun on him. As he was apprehensive about being unarmed, he looked for something that could serve as a weapon, but to no avail. With a gulp, he wiped away the sweat on his forehead with his fingers. Step by step, he made his way to the center of the garden. Here and there, Bond could see a few hiding spots tucked within the shadows of the benches and shrubbery. He put himself into a fully alert state, one in which he could respond to a potential attacker, no matter the direction they came from. The garden was set up in a circular fashion, with benches placed around it in accordance with its shape. Bond strained his eyes as he looked at each bench in order, and on one of those benches, his eyes landed upon a strange object. Keeping a close eye on his surroundings, he slowly approached the bench, and as he got closer to it, its shape was made clear to him. It was around the size of a soccer ball, round and dark. It was Darth Spider's helmet. A severed human head. Bond, who had investigated countless murder cases involving dismemberment in the past, quickly recalled an image of a photo he had seen once. The bad feeling in his chest grew stronger and stronger. Recognizing the possibility of it being his junior's head, vengeful anger and furious rage toward the perpetrator bubbled up from within. Bond gritted his teeth and drew even closer to the bench. The object did not move a single inch. The wind of the night continued to blow. Then Bond heard a gunshot. He froze in response to the sudden sound. Normally, the detective would duck and investigate the direction the sound had come from, but he was unable to do even that. No. In actuality, there was no need for him to do that anymore. Feeling a burning heat in his chest, Bond touched it with his hand. Oh, gosh. A slippery sensation. Something was flowing out from his body, accompanied by the very particular smell of blood. Only a short moment following the gunshot did Bond's mind begin to register pain within him. He had been shot. The moment he realized this, all strength left his legs. Unable to remain standing, he collapsed to the ground. Oh, God dang it! It was him! Ah! Suwa, you bastard! Ah! I knew you were evil! I knew you were evil! I don't know if he's the killer, but I knew he was evil. The footsteps from earlier were approaching him. As his vision grew blurry, he desperately looked up at the person drawing near. And yeah, like, he faked his own kidnapping to lure in Bond. A dark shadow with a gun in his hand. A shadow so dark, Bond could not recognize its face. And, there's also the fact that he has a gun in the first place. So, yeah.
Ah.
A voice came. You bastard.
手を引けって言ったのに。
It was him. A voice he recognized.
残念っすよ、先輩。
Bon collapsed in a heap, was met with the ridicule of one man, Suwa Mamoru.
スワがお前が俺を。
そうっす。いやー、祝初発砲ってところっすか？
As he left into the night, Suwa casually picked up the object from the bench.
ちなみに先輩、やけにこれに注目してたっすけど、そんなに珍しかったんすか？ダーススパイダーのヘルメット。
Suwa, who had now returned to Bon, had held the dark helmet in front of the detective's face in an ostentatious manner. You piece of human trash. As Bon laughed, his vision grew blurrier and blurrier. Oh my gosh, this probably means he also intentionally sabotaged Bon's whole presentation of the group dive murder then. Both his arms and legs felt extremely cold. His chest hurt, but not just from the physical pain. He also felt an intense gaze upon him, but he had no more strength to conclude whether it was Suwa's or someone else's. Knowing that his life would last only a few more minutes, Bon forced his growingly heavy body to face upward. With arms and legs outstretched, only the night sky lay above him. A sky overcast, with no stars to be seen. But even if there were any left in the sky, Bon had long since lost the ability to see them. Bon, no. After a few coughs, the taste of blood spread through his mouth.
そうお前はバカだ。まだガキでどうしようもないくらいのバカなデカだ。だが俺はお前のこと結構勝手だ。
自分は先輩が鬱陶しくてしょうがなかったっすよ。
まあ気持ちはわかる。
I assume Suwa was probably one of the people behind the cover-ups. Bon's breathing grew increasingly shallow. Only a faint wheezing sound could be heard leaking from his throat. Before long, he would be unable to perceive anything anymore.
何者なんだお前。
With his consciousness fading in and out, Bon spoke one final question, and in response, Suwa pointed the muzzle at Bon, then gave his reply.
魔法使いっす。
Welp. That was why there was... that was why he was being weird about the wizard stuff, I guess.
バカが。
Before either of them could realize it, the wind had stopped blowing. The darkness had quickly turned to a place of serenity, and within it, two figures remained frozen still. But that, too, remained only for an ephemeral moment. Suwa's finger, now curled around the trigger, slowly moved inward.
先輩に信仰の救いあれ。
Yep, occultist. Damn it. Fine. Oh. Fine. Oh. This is why Columbo didn't have a sidekick. Kill me. Kill me. Lol. Kill me. Kill her. After all this time, only now you become Chuny, LMAO. Kugum. Or were you rejected by an IRL girl? Kill me. In that case, I've got some good news for you. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. If you stay a virgin till 30... if you stay a virgin till 30... Kill me. Kill me. You become a wizard. Wizard again. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. That's a pro tip. Kill me. Kill me. Speaking of pro tips. Kill me. Apparently there's gonna be a festival in about an hour. Kill me. Kill me. It'll be at Shibuya's Scramble Crossing. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. Jesus, you're annoying. What the F, LOL. Kill me. Well, if that's what you want, you should go. Kill me. Kill me. You're a celebrity, so you'll be the center of attention. Maybe you can get someone there to kill you. Turning off my PC monitor, I hugged my knees with my arms.
僕を殺してよ。誰か。
お兄ってば。
In my hand was Seraton, my one and only ally.
おーい、開けろ。
Perhaps because I'd been holding her in my sweaty hands for a while, her slender limbs were all sticky. And not only that, but her arms had been bent.
ほら、開けろ。
Advice. Okay, positive. It couldn't be hell.
バカ鬼。
There was
There's no way I misheard that. Out of every girl that visited my base, there was only one dumbass that would scream outside of it like that. Nanami was here. I was somewhat surprised at how indifferent I felt in response to that fact. I just didn't care. What would her coming here while I was this far gone even do for me? Besides, it wasn't like it was out of the ordinary for Nanami to come here. Hadn't Rimi said that she was going to rescue her anyway? The noise was starting to irritate me. Just leave a monster like me alone. Nanami should have been focused on her right hand, not me. Not that I knew what had happened to it. I didn't have it in me to talk to anyone anymore. But she was being too loud, so I was forced to get up from my chair and head for the door. The door seemed oh so far away to me, which made me realize I was scared to see her. She has a bandage. As I opened the door, Nanami smiled and waved at me. I froze in place. She was acting way too normal. She was acting way too energetic. I'd seen it. A white bandage wrapped around her right wrist. So why? He then remembered the phone call I'd gotten a few hours earlier. The pained voice asking me to give her right hand back. And now, the smile she had right now. And the bandage around her right wrist contradicted each other. Nanami was contradicting herself. Oh, I see. She was also a delusion. She had to be. I never had a little sister named Nanami to begin with. I got it now. That had to be it. After ignoring her and heading back into my room, I sat down on the sofa. I once again took hold of my Seraton figure and gripped her tight. So tight, in fact, that my hand hurt slightly. But it didn't matter, because that pain, too, was a delusion. Now I think about it, we've never seen his room from this angle. Everything in this world was made up of delusions. Delusions developed only within my mind. Both me and this delusion I was looking at were fake.
徹夜でゲームでもやってたの？もっと人間らしい生活したら？え、なになに？
黙れ。
ちょっと、そんな言い方しなくてもいいじゃん。お兄だからって何言っても許されるとか思ってる？
黙れよ。妄想妹が。
妄想？
I surrendered my body to the sofa and looked up at the ceiling. With no particular goal in mind, I started counting the rusty spots. I didn't want to look at Nanami. I'd only feel empty if I did. Well, not that I cared about whether I felt empty or not, given I was just a delusionary existence.
ねえお兄、本当に平気？いつもと全然様子が違うけど。
Worrying about me like a good little sister, huh? My delusional sister was worried about me. That fact alone filled me with anger. Besides, who was she to have come to in my room like she owned the place?
あ、わかった。お腹空いたんでしょう。
I gritted my teeth.
だったら、ナナが何か作ろうか？
どれ？
ん？鳥って言った？鶏肉？
No one said a thing about takeout.
鶏肉だとやっぱ唐揚げかな。でも一人で作ったことないし。あ、別にお兄のリクエストがあったから作るわけじゃないからね。ナナも今日は鶏肉で何か作りたいなって思ってただけだよ。
This Nanami was really annoying. The fact she was so similar to the real one wasn't something I could ignore. Wait, did a real Nanami even exist in the first place? And what was this Nanami? Real? The real Nanami? My head became a mess, so I stopped thinking. I didn't care anymore. At the end of the day, everything was a delusion.
包帯取れ。取ってみろ、ボケが。
包帯って、あ、これ転んで打撲しただけだし。
Just a fall. Was it true? Or was she lying? I would know if she took it off.
ほんと、わがままなお兄だな。じゃあ約束してよ。ナナが包帯取ってみせたら、お兄も元気出すって。
The sound of rustling cloth rang throughout the quiet room, followed by a ringing in my ears. My head hurt. These two were delusions, though, so I paid them no
こ
mind.
れで満足って、ちょっとお兄、わざわざ取ったんだから、ちゃんと見てよ。
I sluggishly lowered my gaze. Nanami had rolled up her uniform sleeve. She was now sticking her right hand out toward me. When I looked at her slender arm, I saw. Whose eyes are those eyes? Blood. Dripping blood. Bloody words had been cut into her arm, and they said,
その目、誰の目？
My vision flashed, and when it passed just like that, the horrifying wound on her arm was gone. I had been hyperventilating, so I moved to catch my breath. I forcefully bit my lip. Nanami was rubbing the arm she had taken the bandage off.
青あざ、だいぶ消えてくれたな。最初はすごく腫れてたんだよ。
I didn't know whether that was the truth or not. Sure, there wasn't a wound there, but there had been before. I didn't understand anything anymore. I didn't want to think anymore. I once again laid my head on the sofa.
ねえ、ナナミ。
Without meeting her eyes, I called out to my sister, or to the girl whose identity I wasn't sure of.
お前が本物でも偽物でもどっちでもいいよ。
Right now, I only wanted one thing.
僕を殺してくれないか。
Whoosh. Whoosh. At the front entrance to AH Tokyo General Hospital, Kusunoki Yua fixed her gaze beyond the automatic door. Having been told by Bond to get out of here now, she had reluctantly complied and went outside. However, in her worry, she could not bring herself to go any farther. Bond had followed the mysterious figure and vanished up the hospital stairs. It had not even been 3 minutes since then, but hoping that Bond had already returned, Yua peeked into the lobby. So she didn't hear any bangs, or is this before? This was after Bond had headed into the hospital alone. Yua had ignored Momose's orders and had followed after him. Also, she could get one step closer to the truth behind her little sister's death and the true perpetrator. The person that had told Bond to back off over the phone and had abducted Bond's junior, someone who must have been named Tsuwa-san, was most likely the same one that had killed her sister, Mia. That was the feeling Yua had,
and as such, she had been unable to hold back her impulsive emotions. Despite Bond's various warnings about the dangers of involving herself with this case, Yua had come nonetheless. Moreover, it was not as though Yua would be able to achieve anything by coming here. She was nothing more than a powerless high school girl, after all. Somewhere in her mind, Yua had hoped that Bond would simply come running gallantly back after apprehending the culprit. If that happened, she would have the opportunity to question them directly. Why did my sister have to die? That was the one thing Yua had to ask. Suddenly, Yua felt a gaze upon her. She nervously scanned her surroundings. This always happens when we change to their perspective. It had not even been 2 hours since the sun had set, yet oddly enough... Whoops. Yet oddly enough, the hospital's front entrance was eerily quiet. Right next to it was the urgent care entrance, which also served as the entrance for emergencies. And yet, not even there housed any signs of human presence. A train gently ran along its tracks beside the hospital. Hardly any cars passed by the large street in front of it, and there was nary a single passerby. Housed between the sleepless cities of Shibuya and Shinjuku, where Yua was now akin to an abyss of darkness, formed in the interstice of 2 bursts of blinding light. No figure that could conceivably be responsible for the gaze was visible. Holding back her anxiety, Yua placed her hand on her chest and let out a small sigh. Following this, she found herself glancing over at the hospital ward. A hospital should not be this quiet, even at night. Wow. It's Mia. There, at the entrance to the hospital ward, stood a single girl. The lights were out, rendering the area very dimly lit, and yet the girl's figure was clearly visible amid the darkness.
Mia-chan.
Without intending to, Yua whispered that name. Her sense of reason told her it was impossible, but nonetheless, she could not keep those words from escaping. The girl was a mirror image of her. A mirror image of her twin sister that was no longer of this world. Moreover, Yua recognized the clothes she was wearing. She knew, almost for a fact, that they were her sister's clothes. The possibility of her perhaps being a ghost filled Yua with fear. Fear that made her hair stand on end. Suddenly, the girl turned and headed for the automatic door marking the entrance to the hospital ward. The moment she grew close enough, the door quietly slid open. It isn't a ghost. Yua was in shock, but before she could register anything more, she promptly ran after the girl and into the hospital ward. Inside, perhaps due to it being past closing time, it was even quieter than outside. Each time Yua took a step forward, her footsteps echoed forth into the depths of the corridor. It had just been the same in the outpatient ward. The fact that it was even quieter here made her very uneasy. The girl had disappeared up the stairs. Yua heard the faint sound of laughter coming from ahead. It's like a scene straight from a ghost story. With that on her mind, Yua cautiously made her way up the stairs, step by step. She arrived on the 2nd floor. Glancing around the corridor, she did not see anyone, something she had expected. But just as she was suspecting that may have been a mere illusion, a girl's laughter sounded from the floor above. That voice and the sound of its laughter were identical to what Yua had heard time and time again in the past. Climbing to the third floor and looking down the corridor, Yua saw a girl with the same face as her standing there. One of the victims of the first New Gen case, the group dive, her little sister, who should have died 2 months ago. Kusunoki Miya was stood right there with an unmistakable sense of presence.
So,
Yua removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. However, even after putting her glasses back on, she looked to see that Miya was still there.
みやちゃんなの？
どう思う？
A voice so clear it could never be an illusion, and that intrepid smile on her face, that laughter in the air. It was exactly the same as Yua remembered from her sister. Miya had always acted this very same way. In order for her to be the wrongdoer in the eyes of others, she had laughed like that all the time.
みやちゃん。
本当に私がミヤだ。あなたがユアだと思う？
Oh no! Oh no.
どういうこと？
You're Miya and the victim was Yua.
もし逆だったら、あなたはミヤ、死んだのはユア、殺したのはあなた。
何を言っているの？
あなたは親に愛される姉が疎ましくてネットで殺人を依頼したのよ。しかも自殺に見せかけるように見ず知らずの4人も一緒に飛び降りさせた。あなたは姉になりすまして妹の死を悲しみ涙を流しているふりをしながら、これまで姉が独占していた親の愛を手に入れて、心の中では北総園で。
Oh, that's a contrived story.
違うわ。私はユアよ。
誰がそれを証明するの？
私はユアのはず。
でも確信が持てない。
私を私だと証明するものって何？
顔？名前？記憶？
自分のことなのに。
自分で自分を証明するなんて不可能よ。
私がミヤだっていう可能性もあるの。
あなたはいろいろと調べていたじゃない。
多重人格、無遊病、
記憶捏造、それから妄想。
The concepts Yua herself had been looking into prior to now showed just how real the ambiguity of memories, or perhaps recollections, truly was. Ugh. She didn't know nor understand herself anymore. What was she? Yua cradled her head as she shook it in denial.
あなたは誰？
Was she Yua, who had always played being the good child and was automatically loved and cherished by her parents? Was she Miya, who had always played the bad child and was actively hated by her parents? The child who, despite her actions being her own, offcast her sister glares of jealousy and hatred.
さあ、私も。
Miya, or possibly Yua, guided Yua, or possibly Miya, as she walked down the corridor soundlessly.
私と同じ目に遭いなさい。
Yua and Miya, identical twins, faces a mirror image of one another. And the boundary that served to differentiate the two was growing more and more blurred. Two enormous boxes stood tall within the darkness. and yet, compared to the nearby Shinjuku skyscrapers, they were akin to a small child looking up at their parents. The hospital roof, that was where Yua had found herself, having been led there by Mia. A section of the towering fence had been torn open just wide enough to allow a person to fit through it. Whether this was an intentional effort, none could say. Mia and Yua, moving through the torn section to the outer side of the fence, both now stood at the edge of the roof. Before them, the outpatient ward. As that location was lower than the hospital ward, the entire breadth of the roof garden was visible to them. However, the lights were still turned off, so even if there were people there, Yua would be unable to know. The wind blew strongly on the rooftop. The gale made Yua's and Mia's soft hair flutter, along with the hems of their clothes.
私たちはもともと一つだったんだから。
Dang it. I knew it.
戻るだけ。一歩を踏み出せば、あなたは私になる。
Yua, her eyes vacant of all light, mechanically whispered those emotionless words. Spreading her arms to maintain her balance, she endured the upward rising wind. Beside her, Mia, arms spread just as Yua's were, looked at her sister and smiled.
耐える必要なんてないよ。
Oh gosh, is it Hazuki?
あなたは私の痛みを知らなくちゃならない。さあ、飛んで。
Oh, could just be a delusion. Yeah.
そうすれば、私もあなたも同じ痛みを共有するわ。私はどっちなの？私？あなた？それを聞いても意味はないわ。どっちにしたって。あなたは飛ぶ。
All hesitation left within Yua disappeared, and so, moving her foot forward, she... A gunshot tore through the dark night, and with a start, Yua came to her senses. Realizing where she was, she let out a frightful scream. The sheer height of where she stood immediately disoriented her, making her lose her balance. She very nearly fell, but in desperation, she shot her hand toward the fence behind her and grabbed onto it. Because of this, she successfully managed to avoid being met with a terrible fate. The gunshot had come from the roof of the outpatient ward, leading her to look at it once more. In the circular clearing on the roof garden, she managed to spot multiple figures. There were two of them. One was on the ground, and the other stood beside them.
Anson.
Had the detective shot someone? Or had the detective been shot by someone?
何をしてるの？どうして私と同じ痛みを味わおうとしないの？そんなの卑怯よ。ずるいわ。ミヤちゃん。違うわ。私はユアよ。ユアは私。ミヤはあなた。あなたは一体何なの？私はあなたの望んだもの。あなたは私の望んだもの。
Mia reached for her sister. Placing her hands around Yua's neck, she began to strangle her. Yua felt a strong pressure on her throat. She could no longer breathe. Mia was no ghost. She definitively had a body of flesh and blood. And now she was strangling Yua with it.
お願い、死んでよ。今日ぐらい私のお願いを聞いて。いつも我慢してきたんだから。
Yua's vision grew crimson. She reached her hands out into the air in front of her, found herself unable to grasp anything. I'm going to die. Awash with the most extreme dread, using her whole body, Yua called upon strength she did not even know she had, as she tried desperately to break free from Mia's grasp. But Mia was too strong. Yua was unable to move her even a single inch. Even Yua's thoughts were dyed crimson. It felt as though her consciousness was being coated in a layer of viscous blood. In a desperate frenzy, she shook her head so violently, her glasses fell from her face. And from that point onward, to an outside observer, Yua and Mia were no longer distinguishable. It did not matter who killed whom. The result was arbitrary. If Yua died, all Mia would have to do was become Yua. If Mia died, all Yua would have to do was become Mia. Feelings of resignation steadily spread throughout Yua's heart. Before her eyes was Mia's, or possibly Yua's, face, seeping with anger. Not wanting to see such a sight, she looked away. And what vaulted into her red field of view was the shrubbery. The flowers adorning the roof garden. In her mind, Yua felt that there was a shadow among those flowers, the likes of which she had never seen before. Though perhaps it was simply an illusion. She had dropped her glasses during the struggle after all. However, no longer able to breathe and suffering from so much pain, a faint sense of peace gradually rose from within her. Despite her thoughts of simply surrendering herself and peacefully passing on, her instinctive desire not to die denied her of that peace. It made Yua extend her hand toward that disparate shadow. Her distance from the shrubbery was about 2 meters. How she was now, there was no way she could reach it, even if she were to extend her hand. And yet, her fingertips touched something hard and cold. She then grasped it, almost completely unconsciously. The second she did so, Kusunoki Yua's consciousness, right on the verge of fading, instantly became clear, as though the haze had been dispelled from her mind. There was an invisible yet fierce impact. Her sister, rained upon by showering red lights akin to petals, was blown away. Languidly standing up as she gasped for air, Yua looked at what she was holding and instantly doubted her eyes. It was a sword. All too elegant, like the glasses worn by one. All too sharp, like the wit shunned by the other. All too immaculate, all too vigorous. All too delicate, its frame easy to fracture. All too profound, its nature veiled. And so beautiful, it beckoned tears from all who laid eyes upon it. So beautiful, it beckoned tears from all who laid eyes upon it. The object now in her hands, it reminded Yua of Ayase's sword that she had seen at the overpass, and of the sword that Bon had spoken of, Senna's.
今のは何？
Mia, after being blown away by the mysterious impact, had been buried in the shrubbery. As she held her head, she freed herself from it and crawled back to her feet.
あなたは何をしたの？私はミヤちゃん。私やっと分かったわ。どうしてここまで一生懸命あなたの死の真相を調べていたのか。私を殺そうとしたの？私はまた殺されるところだったの？また？結局私はあなたが怖かったのよ。当てつけに死なれたと思ったの。 あなたがわからなかったの。あなたが死んだ理由は私のせいじゃないって証明して安心したかった。最低のお姉ちゃんね。どうして死んでくれないのよ。
She could no longer get through to her. Their two selves, once together in the beginning, had now diverged completely, never to return to one again. Mia reached to grab her once more, reminded of the pain she had experienced before. Yua's trembles of dread returned, leading her to brandish her sword. It carved a sharp trail, and then cut the ghost in half. Mia's movements came to a halt, and with a look of shock on her face, she traced the wound of gouged flesh with her hand, beginning from the left side of her torso and ending all the way at her right shoulder. No blood sprang forth.
ミヤちゃんは2ヶ月前に死にました。それならあなたは誰なんですか？
Countless particles, large enough to be seen by the naked eye, came flowing out from within Mia. Her body, now enveloped in bubbles, gradually collapsed to the ground as her silhouette faded and faded. It was now transforming into something else. Yua, with feelings of incredulity, saw what it was. After a moment's wait, a man with an impressively large physique appeared in Mia's place. He was wearing a denim shirt, jeans, and a rucksack on his back. Yua had never seen the man before.
誰？あなた誰？どうしてミヤちゃんの姿に？どうやって？
Yua backed away in confusion, still holding her D-sword. The man was similarly bewildered. He had likely not predicted that he would be uncovered, leading him to act in a very clearly frantic manner.
お前こそなんでまさかこのガキギガロマニアックスか聞いてないぞくそどうしたら
And then, ignoring gravity itself, it came flying in, its path almost horizontal. By the time the man looked behind him, it had already perforated the rucksack on his back. And from that same rucksack, a pale flash of light surged. The man, as though he had just received an electric shock, stiffened up like a pole. His eyes shot open wide, and only a moment later, he lost consciousness, falling face first to the ground. He foamed at the mouth, and every so often, his body would twitch. The object that had pierced the rucksack was a sword quite like the one Yua had obtained just a moment ago, with beautiful curves adorning its every edge.
これ
Ayase. Yua remembered that sword. She had seen it once before. A single presence approached her. Yua raised her head. Someone then emerged from the darkness.
何事かと思ったらこんな騒ぎになっていたの。岸本さん。
Without a change in her expression, Ayase glanced at the sword Yua held in her hands.
感じる大いなる意志を。私がこの病院に居続けた意味はこういうことだったんだ。
Yua had sunk into the ground, dumbfounded. Ayase picked up the glasses that had fallen near her, crouched down in front of Yua, and peered at the girl's face. Then, with her slender fingers, she brushed Yua's hair aside and gently put her glasses back in place.
君もグラジオールの黒騎士だったのね。
And with that, Ayase gave a faint, transient smile. No one's gonna save my man Bond!
僕を 殺してくれないか。
No one's gonna tell me that the second bullet was a fake out? That he's actually still alive? Come on. Come on. Nanami's face stiffened, but shortly after that, she put on a clearly forced smile.
お兄、つまんない冗談やめなよ。
That reaction wasn't like her. Normally, she wouldn't just laugh it off. Normally, she'd angrily yell, "Don't say that, you dumb jerk!" then spend the next few minutes reprimanding me. Well, not that it mattered. I didn't care. If she wouldn't kill me, I had no more business with this Nanami. She could just up and vanish for all I cared.
Better hope it's not another dweeb with a rucksack.
I locked eyes with Seraton. If only Seraton was in the third dimension, she would have gladly granted my wish. If I was gonna be born a delusionary existence anyway, at least have me be born in the second dimension.
ねえ、そんな冗談は置いといて、その話があるんだ。あのね、お兄にもらったバングルなくしちゃったの。どうせ適当に扱ってたんだろうとか言わないでね。ナナ、そんなことしてないもん。本当に大切にしてたもん。なのにどこでなくしたのかもわかんなくて。
But you treasured it. Seriously, incredible. Genuinely fucking incredible. Comedy gold, really. Besides, I gave you it, didn't I? So it's worthless already, anyway.
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
Besides, the fact that I'd given Nanami the bangle in and of itself was suspicious. It could have been a delusion too, for all I knew. That was why nothing in this world was worth anything. Each and everything in my memories was worthless.
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
お兄が初めてくれたプレゼントだったのにな。なんでなくしちゃったりしたんだろう。
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
お兄、聞いてる？
僕は妄想じゃない。僕は妄想じゃない。
お兄はどうしていつもそうなの？
Her head hung low, and her fists clenched tight. Nanami let out a faint whisper.
たまにはお兄ちゃんらしく頼りがいのあるとこ見せてよ。
What now? If you're here to criticize me, you're wasting your time. After all, I'm a delusionary existence.
Sorry, give me a sec.
What now? If you're here to criticize me, you're wasting your time. After all, I'm a delusionary existence.
僕は妄想じゃない。 僕はもうそうじゃない。
All I did was stare blankly at Seraton's smile. There was no reason to listen to Nanami. It was all pointless. After all, I was a delusionary existence.
今までずっとナナがしっかりしなきゃって思って頑張ってきたけど、でもね、やっぱりナナだってたまには誰かに甘えたいよ。誰かにじゃなくてお兄に甘えたいよ。
僕はもうそうじゃない。僕はもうそうじゃない。
だってお兄はナナのお兄なんだから、お兄に頼りたいって思うことナナにもあるんだよ。
僕はもうそうじゃない。僕はもうそうじゃない。
そりゃいつもああしろこうしろ言われてお兄も嫌だろうけど、それはお兄がだらしないから仕方なく。言いたいことはそういうことじゃなくて、
僕はもうそうじゃない。僕はもうそうじゃない。
ナナだっていろいろ愚痴を聞いてもらいたい時とか泣きたい時とかあるんだよ。お兄に優しくしてもらいたい時とかあるんだよ。
僕はもうそうじゃない。僕はもうそうじゃない。
ねえ、お兄。ナナの話聞いてよ。ナナ、今すごく悲しいんだよ。お兄にもらった大切なバングルなくなっちゃって、声出して泣きたいくらい悲しくて辛くて、お兄に抱きしめてほしいのに、お兄に頭撫でて慰めてほしいのに。ねえお兄、今日だけはナナのわがまま受け止めてよ。
Oh. Raising my head in a daze, I saw Nanami crying. She was hanging her head low, and while she was trying her best to hold them in, tears ran down her pained face all the same.
Okay, I asked, and apparently this is gonna go on for a good while longer. So I'm gonna halt things here for now. I don't like leaving because like there's so many things I want to see answered, but like, man. Mom better not be dead. I'm gonna kick Sua's scrawny, smug, schmuck ass. Eh. Yeah, he's too much of a dweeb to be the new gen killer. I don't think it's him. He's such a dweeb. Calling himself a wizard. Cringe. Cringe. But, yeah. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.